hope, help, and healing with a hint of humor. Hashimoto'sHealing.com.
Hello, people. I'm Marc Ryan, licensed acupuncturist and herbalist from Hashimoto'sHealing.com. And welcome back for Module 2 of 4 Weeks to Healing, Designing Your Hashimoto's Lifestyle. Hope your week went well. Been corresponding with many of you, and I know there's been a lot to do this first week, and it was really it was all about taking inventory and seeing where the main issues are. And I know some of us freaked out a little bit because, began to realize, this is pretty darn complicated. And there's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of different systems involved. And let's be real, Hashimoto's is complex. And so really healing also is going to be kind of complex. So I just want to encourage you to get comfortable in some measure with this not being just simple and something that's going to fix like that. You know, and I'm sure a few of us got triggered, felt a little overwhelmed, or frustrated, or just giving up. I totally get that. Believe me. I've been there. I got a pretty good handle on all this now, and I made a ton of progress in a number of areas of my life. And, energy really isn't an issue for me now, as long as I get enough sleep, and I haven't gotten quite enough sleep lately. And as long as I don't get too stressed, I got the diet thing pretty well figured out. And I understand what to do when certain things happen. Like when do we need to exercise to get more energy, how to do it in a way that won't wipe me out, how to use stress relieving techniques. And we're going to learn all of that in this week. All of this stuff is coming together now. So I know some of you are in a place where you might be looking up at the mountain, wondering how the heck am I ever going to get to the summit? And in some ways it might seem impossible. But it's really not. You can totally do it. It's very doable. But we have to do it a little bit by bit, day by day, and accumulate little successes that's going to eventually turn this whole thing around. Can't climb the whole mountain in one day. So, and the reason for this is because right now we have all these systems interacting, and they're creating some really vicious cycles, right? And these vicious cycles are leading to negative domino effects. And as we heal these different areas, which we're going to start working on today with the diet, you'll get things to turn around. And we're going to see all of this get turned around and turn on its head. And a lot of those negatives are going to become positives as we unwind these webs and these vicious cycles, and we get this positive healing momentum. I totally get this because 3 years ago, I was in the middle of my business imploding, my health falling apart, and everything going wrong everywhere. And there are so many issues. I couldn't focus on any of them. I just wanted to give up. Then one morning I woke up and I saw it. It came to me I knew I had this new path I had to walk. But it definitely didn't happen overnight. Right? It's taking time and patience and commitment. Remember we talked about that last week? To get here. And I've had plenty of meltdowns along the way. It's okay to have meltdowns. Sometimes they're good. They're cathartic. But don't get attached to them. And also know that being exhausted by reading and filling out questionnaires and having issues with the technology and stuff, that can be part of this whole brain fatigue that we spoke about last week. And sometimes that's what's going on too. If you can't concentrate for long periods of time, that can really be brain fatigue. Okay. So, let's just take a moment. I just want to let everything go. It's all going to be okay. We're putting this plan together. So let's inhale, exhale, let all the fear go, let all the overwhelm go. Just let it go. Those gremlins, tell them they aren't the boss of you. Inhale and exhale. It's going to be okay. It really is. Understand we don't have to figure all of this out right now, or even in these 4 weeks. Right? This is a beginning. We're getting an understanding of the big picture and of all the things and the biggest impact, all the things that have the biggest impact on them. And also just know we have more support for you after this and in addition to this. I'm going to share that with you more once we finish with the program. And if you feel like you need that, I just want you to know that's available too. Okay, but this week we're getting into the diet and we have a ton of stuff to cover. So let's get to it, shall we? All right, first of all, a few logistical things. There's a lot of great stuff in the Module 2 area this week. We hear after the broadcast. There will be a downloadable copy of Mickey Trescott's Autoimmune Paleo Cookbook. You'll also find a complete guide to food sources of vitamins and minerals, which I have compiled for you. Some during the elimination phase and the other parts of the diet. Because I want you to first think about this with getting your nutrients from food. A lot of people just reach for the supplement, but foods really are a complete package, and they have those vitamins and minerals and other great phytonutrients and other great stuff to help you absorb it and utilize it. Also, you're going to find this week's workbook and this week's video transcript there. And as you know, Mickey herself is going to be joining us in a conversation and be a guest this week with us. She's actually currently on tour promoting her the new release of her book. It's a hard copy from what was formerly the e-copy, which you guys are getting. And I was able to get her to sit down and chat with us a couple of weeks ago. We were really fortunate to have her. So we'll be using some parts of that conversation in this week's presentation. And the entire interview is also going to be available there. So there's going to be over 2 hours of great content for you this week. A ton of stuff to watch. Okay. So let's get a little context for all of this and where we are today. You know, I'm continually dumbfounded when people share with me that their doctors say, yeah, diet, nah, it doesn't have anything to do with Hashimoto's. Doesn't make any, doesn't matter. To me, this represents an incredible level of ignorance because there is a ton of research available on the impact of diet, the link between dietary proteins like gluten and autoimmune disease, and about issues like leaky gut and autoimmune disease. It's not like a woo-woo or crazy alternative talk. This is evidence-based. It's factual. There's plenty of good science that supports this. Diet has a huge impact on autoimmune disease. And think about it. Where is your immune system? An estimated 70% is found in your digestive tract. We know this. And much of the reason there is so much is found there is because this is really where we interact with the external environment and the inside of our body. It's the most interaction other than our skin. Right? We evolved from hunter-gatherers, from the plains of Africa, who ate things that they could find. They picked stuff off the ground. They hunted and killed, and sometimes they ate like dead animals, stuff they picked off of trees. And guess what else was in all of those places? Bacteria and viruses and fungi, and lots of them. So a lot of what goes down the hatch has these critters going along for the ride. And we have to have a good defense there, or they're going to get to us, and they're going to kill us. So we have to have a very strong immune system in our digestive tract. That's why most of it is there. This is really our barrier from this contact with the outside world. And every time you eat or snack or nosh or nibble, you need protection. Now, with autoimmune disease, one of the main things that happens is our immune system becomes overzealous. Right? There's a lot of reasons for this. We don't know why exactly, but what we do know is there's a lot of different contributing factors that make this happen. Usually there is exposure to some kind of virus or pathogen. I think over 85% of my patients have been exposed to Epstein-Barr virus at some point in their life. There is environmental exposure like radiation and other environmental toxins. There's stress. There's definitely a genetic predisposition. And there's leaky gut, or the breakdown of this barrier in the gut. And all those things create this kind of perfect storm that causes us to lose self-tolerance. It's not just one thing. It's all this stuff together. And once this happens, the immune system starts attacking our own tissue. And guess what else we found? Well, we know that every autoimmune disease has one common denominator. And that is leaky gut. So, again, in a simple sense, leaky gut really is the breakdown of that intestinal barrier system. This is considered the precursor to all autoimmune disease. So in order to develop autoimmune disease, there are a few things that have to happen. Right? You have this genetic vulnerability, you have the triggers, like the ones I was mentioning, and you have leaky gut. Those three things. And while there's lots of different triggers, and there's lots of genetic scenarios, there's not just one, there's all these different genetic variants that could be possible. The one thing we know that's always consistent is leaky gut. And this is caused by diet and lifestyle. And if we heal it, we can dramatically alter the progression and the proliferation of autoimmune disease. Remember last week, we talked all about how this is progressive, how it's moving on different stages, how it's going to other tissue. Well, that's the place to heal it, is in the gut. And many, many people, myself included, believe that healing that gut is really the key to healing autoimmune disease. And without question, this is the key to slowing and stopping that progression. And we can't heal it without addressing the diet. You just can't do it. So diet has everything to do with it. Doctor! Everything. Alright, so let's just talk a little bit briefly about what leaky gut actually is, and then we're going to jump into kind of the nuts and bolts and talk with Mickey all about this diet. So when we look at the digestive system, it starts with the mouth, goes to the esophagus, to the stomach, into the large intestines, into the colon, and out the anus. Right? It's really like one big continuous tube. And this whole tube is lined with cells called enterocytes. It's really kind of a layer that's separating us inside from outside, inside world to the outside world. And the job of these cells is to break down and transport broken food and take it from the outside and bring it inside the body safely. And right across that layer is the inside of the immune system. There's tons of immune cells and all this network of blood vessels and lymph vessels. It's really like kind of the circulatory system of the immune system, the lymph vessels. And so leaky gut happens when these cells break down and when the bonds between these cells break down. And when this happens, you get tiny microscopic holes, and then tiny fragments of stuff start leaking into the bloodstream and into the lymphatic system. And all kinds of stuff leaks through, like bacteria and little pieces of bacteria and little pieces of virus and little tiny food particles and proteins and waste products. Once there's a little hole, it's like a hole in the dike. Like a lot of stuff goes through. And when that happens, this stuff gets through, the immune system goes completely bonkers. It sounds the alarm, says, bad guys everywhere, help! Bring in the troops, kill them! And if enough gets through, then the rest of the body goes nuts too. The liver starts to get involved. And you get this systemic inflammatory response. And then the whole immune system gets sent into overdrive, not just the immune system there. That's what autoimmunity is. Immune system in Crazyville. Overzealous. Out of control. And some of these things that do get through cause a release of certain immune cells called inflammatory cytokines. And these don't really have a specific target. They're just kind of like mercenaries killing anything. So some of the cells of our body end up being in the way and are kind of like friendly fire. And some of this stuff is toxic, and the liver has to deal with it. Well, soon the liver gets clogged, and these toxins accumulate in the body, and the inflammation spreads to other parts of the immune system. All that joins in the battle, and yikes. It's super destructive inflammation. This is at the root of autoimmune disease, and the root of other diseases too, like cancer. Same thing, same origin. And in this process, we also have antibodies to stuff being formed. Like you can get antibodies to casein, milk protein. You get antibodies to gluten, wheat protein. We also get autoantibodies. Those are antibodies to our own tissue. Because proteins in our bodies aren't that different from these other proteins that we eat. You know, all proteins are made of the same 15 amino acids. So there's a lot of repeating sequences. And the immune system looks for those sequences to recognize them and label them. So leaky gut provides two different things. It provides the trigger for the body to produce these autoantibodies, and that extra oomph for the immune system to attack. When you add the right genetic situation, boom, that's it. That's your recipe for autoimmune disease. So the diet we're going to be adopting and talking about, the diet that I eat on a daily basis, that Nikki eats and talks about, this is what the cookbook is all about, it's called the Autoimmune Paleo Diet. And this is really designed to heal the gut and calm and reverse this systemic inflammation that is at the root of autoimmune disease. And so the cookbook that you guys are getting, which you can download from the Module 2 page as soon as we're done with tonight's class, has a complete list of foods to have and the foods to avoid. I'm not going to go into them. You can get them all there. But let's just focus for a second on some of these basic principles, and then I'm going to bring Mickey into the conversation so we can talk about it and get some practical tips for implementing. So first of all, I think we're starting to see how this is kind of complex. It requires doing a lot of things in different areas. The reasons why a lot of drugs so often do not result in healing, which is what our objective is they don't factor in this complexity. They do one thing, usually shut something off or stimulate something. But we really need to. We really need to think big picture. We're going to work on healing all these different tissues. Right? With Hashimoto's, conventional medicine says, let the thyroid die or we'll remove it surgically. Well, wait a second. Why is that our only option? It's not, people. We can also work to heal the thyroid. That's what we should be doing. Right? And we got to heal our barrier system. We got to heal the gut, too. We got to fix a leaky gut. We want to reestablish the normal flora in that environment, the good bacteria. Right? This is also hugely important because the good bacteria is what converts thyroid hormone from T4 to its usable form of T3. And to do this, to heal this way, your body's going to need some extra nutrition. It's going to need stress reduced. We'll talk about that next week. It's going to need to get enough sleep. And the damage to your gut has all these other effects too. Like your ability to absorb nutrients from your food. Right? As we heal the gut, we'll also be able to heal your ability to absorb these nutrients. And then you get a positive ripple effect again, this kind of positive domino effect in healing. Okay, does that make sense? So we're going to take a look at what's going on. But here's an important idea that grasps that I really want you to get. This is not really a diet so much as a shift in the way you approach eating into something that supports your healing. You know, again, this whole program is called Designing Your Hashimoto's Lifestyle, so this is really like a lifestyle switch. So we're going to bring in Mickey now, and we're going to have a conversation. I'm going to come back and recap, and I'm talking about how we apply this to different areas that we've identified this week and review some of these really important principles. Hey, Mickey.
Hi, Mark.
Well, welcome back. I heard you were traveling back to the East Coast and promoting your book and doing some other cool stuff.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of traveling lately. It's been really exciting, having the opportunity to teach people about food. It's really taken off because the elimination diet's really helping a lot of people.
Yeah.
So it's really fun to have the opportunity to collaborate with other people, and we've got some exciting stuff planned for the future.
Yeah, and congratulations on the hard copy of your book. I saw some of the pictures, and I really am excited. I can't wait to get a copy.
Thank you. Thank you. I can't wait to share it with you.
Yeah. Well, cool. So I wanted to start out today a little bit. If you could just give kind of a brief, recap of your story, and particularly, your experience with Hashimoto's, and what led you to creating the cookbook and really embracing this diet and this lifestyle.
Yeah, well, a few years ago, I had been vegan for a long time. I was always really interested in health and nutrition. I thought a plant-based diet was the best thing for me, and I was very healthy on that diet for a few years. And then I started having some problems. I went to my doctor, some preliminary testing, specifically about thyroid. I asked about thyroid. He said I was fine. I still had symptoms, and it kind of progressively got worse. And eventually I ended up finding a doctor who diagnosed me with Hashimoto's and celiac disease. Yeah. But he also said, avoid gluten, obviously. You have celiac disease. Your thyroid is normal, even though you have an autoimmune thyroid disease. Mm-hmm. So we'll just wait until your thyroid's worse, and then you can have medication, and everything will be fine. Well, what happened was I got worse, even though I stopped eating gluten, right. And everything wasn't fine, and I lost my job. I was in and out of the hospital with all kinds of various problems, had all kinds of testing. At one point they thought I was developing other autoimmune diseases. But finally I thought about the diet piece in a different perspective and thought maybe I was missing some critical nutrients. Maybe what I was eating wasn't optimal for my conditions. And I came across the autoimmune protocol, and it was not a clean switch. It was definitely over a period of a few months, maybe 6 months total, to just really start eating meat again, start working on my digestion, pulling out all of these foods that were causing inflammation in my body, doing reintroductions, and I made a full recovery over the last 2 years, which has been really incredible. And so now I write and I teach, and I really am impassioned to help people figure out the food piece, I guess, in their chronic illness. It's really important to me. Yeah,
it's wonderful, and your story is really inspiring for many, many people, I think. Let me ask you just a quick question. Why do you think the veganism or vegetarianism is not necessarily so helpful in this healing process with autoimmune disease?
I mean, the idea of eating a lot of plants is actually very healthy. Plants have a lot of vitamins and minerals. They have a lot of fiber, which is really good for cultivating the beneficial bacteria in our guts. Mm-hmm. But with a plant-based diet, you need to get protein somewhere, and your only options are beans and grains, really. Right. So, nuts and seeds do have some protein too, but they also have some of the compounds that beans and grains have in them that actually make them not the most nutritious foods you could be eating. Right. Beans and grains aren't the worst thing in the world, but especially for people with autoimmune disease, they do have compounds that cause leaky gut to worsen, which I know you're going to talk about in a little bit, Mark.
Right.
But they're just not optimal. So maybe for a healthy person, they could tolerate them, but for someone with autoimmune disease, they're just not the best thing they could be eating. And so animal foods, they actually have a lot of the vitamins and minerals that are needed to repair connective tissue, to regulate hormones. I mean, cholesterol, which is the building block of all hormones, comes from animal foods. You can't really get it on a plant-based diet. So a lot of people, they avoid cholesterol thinking that it causes heart disease, but really what's happening is they're avoiding the building blocks of their cell membranes, of their hormones. So, when I started having problems and I started looking into this issue, it kind of started coming together as the vegan diet was just not nourishing me in the way that I needed to be nourished in order to heal from this chronic debilitating illness. And when I looked into it more, I found that meat is actually not as problematic as I thought it was. You know, there are ways to get meat that is natural, sustainable, hormone-free, antibiotic-free, grass-fed, and those animals are perfectly healthy to eat.
Right. I think it's a critical point. I think, you know, so much cholesterol has been so vilified, and of course statin drugs are so profitable that it's really created this, you know, perception for a lot of people that the good fats are not good, and boy, are they important in this population. Yeah.
And especially, you know, if you consider a more traditional diet, even, you know, muscle meat is just one part of the animal, you know, and, you know, there's a lot of other nutrients in connective tissue, maybe in like a fattier cut of meat, or, you know, bone broth made from the bones and the joints. Glycine is an amino acid that is really high in organ meats and in bone broth. So even just breaking out of, okay, eating meat, but actually varying the types or the parts of the animal that you're using, those were all really new concepts to me. And I definitely didn't go from being vegan to eating liver. You know, it's been a big transition.
Right.
But I respect that those foods have been a part of our traditional culture for a long time, and we need to recognize that that actually has a lot of nutrition, and they have a lot of components in them that are very healing, especially to bodies that are trying to heal.
Right, absolutely. I could not agree more. I think it's a very, very valid point. So let's talk a little bit about the autoimmune paleo diet in respect to leaky gut and how it helps to heal that.
Well, the autoimmune protocol removes all foods that have been shown to be gut irritants. So these are all foods that cause intestinal permeability or leaky gut. So they include grains, beans, eggs, nuts, seeds, and nightshade vegetables, which are tomatoes, peppers, spices derived from either of those. A couple herbs like ashwagandha is a nightshade, tobacco is a nightshade. And it's a family of vegetable that has a poisonous quality to it that most people are not sensitive to, but people who have this leaky gut, they've been shown to be one of the largest triggers of it. So, so you remove all of these foods, and it doesn't necessarily mean that for every person with autoimmune disease for the rest of their life, they're going to be sensitive to these foods, but they have the highest chance. So we remove all the foods for an elimination period. I usually go for at least a month. I think 3 months is better, but pretty much as long as you can handle. And really in that time frame, you want to be 100% strict and you want to feel better. So over the course of that time period, if you start feeling your joint pain improve or your sleep improve, or maybe you're happier than you used to be, you don't get headaches, you know, it doesn't mean that all your symptoms are going to be resolved, but feeling better is a great benchmark for reintroducing foods and figuring out what makes you feel worse. So in the reintroduction, you start with a certain food, and there are lists that I have in my book of foods that you introduce earlier and foods that you introduce later. So like nuts and seeds, for example, are eliminated because a lot of people tend to be sensitive to them as an allergy, but they actually don't cause leaky gut. And they're removed just as a precaution, just because a lot of people tend to be sensitive to them. So they're the first thing someone could add back. And they'll want to add them back one at a time, slowly, systematically, over a period of a few days, just to watch to see what kind of symptoms they get.
Yeah, I think that's a critical point. We want to, in the reintroduction period, we want to do it one at a time.
Yes.
Because there is quite a bit of variety between different types of nuts and different types of seeds. So some of them are
like
better tolerated than others. I'm sorry?
So that includes seed spices. So if someone wanted to introduce cumin, you know, they need to do just cumin. They're not going to go make a curry with cumin and cardamom. They need to reintroduce those two separately on two different occasions to see if they work. Same thing with each type of nut. So the reintroduction process can take months, right. But it's really good to know, I've worked with people who are sensitive to pepper, or, who are sensitive to cumin, or are sensitive to almonds, but maybe they're not sensitive to walnuts. So it's really interesting, and it's really good to be thorough and careful in that process. And then once you move on from kind of the easier to reintroduce foods, you can move into, foods like eggs. Egg whites, a lot of people have problems with, and dairy is another. Nightshades, I think, are the last thing people should reintroduce, just because nightshades tend to be the most problematic. But it's a personal process, and people just need to get in touch with their bodies and kind of look inside to see what works for you. And if it's not clear, maybe leave it out for a little longer and then try again. But over the course of this process, you end up with an ideal diet that best supports your healing process.
Right, exactly. Actually, it's funny. I've been sort of playing around with this idea. Like the traditional paleo has the 80-20 principle, where it's like 80% you stay on paleo and then 20% eat whatever you want. Like, obviously, we can't do that.
No, it's 100%.
Right. But what I was thinking, like, within the, obviously it's the things in this area that we know we can eat. As we do the reintroduction process, what I've found has worked for me personally is that's basically where I live the vast majority of the time. And I'll occasionally step out and try things, do that. But whenever I'm not feeling well, or whenever I'm having a flare-up, or whether something's not right, I will go back to that 100% thing. Totally. I just wonder, do you do anything like that?
I do. Yeah. I would say that I'm on a modified autoimmune protocol. Yeah. I know what I tolerate all the time, and I know what I tolerate sometimes. Right. And like eggs, for example, I've been doing this for a couple years. I was unable to reintroduce eggs until I had been on the autoimmune protocol for a year. Yeah. And then when I reintroduced them, I couldn't eat, a 4-egg omelet every morning. I could eat I would eat like plantain pancakes that have like 1 or 2 eggs in them once a week, as part of the batter. Right. And then I gradually would do maybe twice a week. And then I started eating like a couple fried eggs on top of greens. And then I worked up to like an omelet. But for now, I, for the most part, avoid eggs unless I just, want to have a special occasion, maybe brunch with my friends or something. But I don't necessarily think that I'm reacting to them. It's a safe place,
Right. And I think, I do something similar. Like I do eggs just on special occasions, really. Mm-hmm. And really for me, it's like I know there's a kind of sweet spot of when I feel my best. And really, over time, I just like, that's where I want to live for the most part.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And a lot of people think that living this way is overly restrictive, and they think, how could you possibly live the rest of your life like that? But when you've been in a body that feels terrible, it's like you don't want to live the rest of your life in that body. And for me, being healthy, I would do anything in order to continue that health, So I think you have it exactly right. You live in this area and you figure out what it's worth to you, Right. There's a couple things that I will admit. I'm human. I like chocolate. It doesn't like me. So every once in a while, having a little piece of chocolate is worth the reaction I get from it. And I'm aware of that. And, it's fine. I wouldn't recommend that for someone just starting out. I think it's really important to be really strict and just kind of go through the foods so that you really have a clear sense of what you can tolerate and what you can't. Right. But once you've been doing it for a long time, you can kind of figure out when it's okay to go to a restaurant and try to make it work, or when it's important for you to keep all your meals home cooked. Maybe you're not feeling well, get lots of broth, kind of be in more control and tighten it up.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a great way to handle it. And that's important, too, for people to see that there's some flexibility within this, but even within, one analogy I like to use, it's like some of the greatest paintings ever painted were painted with very few colors. Mm-hmm. So in the same way, and that's what I love about your cookbook, it's, yes, it's restrictive, but within that palette, you can create wonderful masterpieces.
There's an unlimited amount of foods.
Yeah.
And they're all very exciting, different foods. I mean, if you think of it in terms of chicken breast, broccoli, and coconut oil, it's boring,
right.
But when you think of like eating bison or duck or rabbit or, a lot of people aren't very into exotic proteins, and I get that. But there's a lot of ways that if you do get bored, you can say, well, I want to try pheasant or quail or, all these different vegetables like kohlrabi or yucca or taro, or, you can really go there.
Right.
So there's a lot of options.
Yeah, there really are. Okay, so let's talk about a couple of practical things. I think that this is kind of a good segue into that. One of the things people often will use as an objection or something from really going wholeheartedly into this is that, it's just too expensive. Mm-hmm. I can't, a lot of people say gluten-free is too expensive. I mean, really, if you're cutting out grains, that's a lot of the expense of being gluten-free. So you're eliminating expense there, but also can you just talk about that a little bit, how you can really do this in an affordable way, too?
Yeah, if you see the diet rules on paper and you go to Whole Foods and you get your organic free-range beef, chicken, and all your organic vegetables, of course, it's going to be like 3 times as expensive as eating a normal diet, which is really off-putting to a lot of people. And what I would argue is that that's the last way that I would buy food now that I know what I know about how to find high-quality food for a good price.
Right.
That's what I do when I'm like in a pinch,
Yeah.
Like, I'm staying, I'm traveling and I'm staying with someone and they have a kitchen. I guess I'll go to the store and buy, health food store priced food.
Right.
That's not where I buy my food.
Right.
So I have a lot of tips for you guys about how you can find food at a better cost. And the first thing I would start with is figure out your budget and figure out a source for meat. And buying meat in bulk is the best way you can save money on quality protein.
Right, great point.
So a really good way to buy meat in bulk is to find a farmer near you, which a lot of people think, I don't have any farmers near me. But I think you'd be surprised if you look on a website like eatwild.org, which is where I originally did my search. And I found that in the area where I live, there are almost hundreds of farms that raise animals really sustainably. And if you buy if you buy, like, say, a cow, a lot of these farms have programs where you can buy a quarter or a half of a cow, which is a lot. You'll need a deep freezer, which is an investment. But you can buy a quarter or half of a cow, and you pay up front, and then the butcher cuts it up to your specifications, and then you end up with this, like, 100 or 200 pounds of meat to put in your freezer. And then you always have it there.
Wow.
And the benefit is that when I buy meat from my farmer, it ends up being about $4 a pound for organic, grass-fed meat. And these animals have been treated with respect, and they haven't had to go to the slaughterhouse, which is really important to me, the ethical piece. As being a former vegan, I don't really want to eat animals that, have to go through those stress hormones and... Right. Just knowing that the farmer, they lived and died on the same property in the field is really important to me. So the only way to legally do that is to buy an animal before they slaughter it. So by buying in bulk, you support this farmer and you get all of this incredible meat. And it's so much cheaper. If you were to buy organic grass-fed, New York steak or something, it's like $17 a pound and you get it for $4. Right. So that's my number one tip.
That's a great tip.
You can also buy pastured chickens from farms. Chicken is a little bit of an expensive meat. I don't usually eat a lot of it just because it's harder to find good chicken. But definitely buying in bulk is a really good way to go. And then my second tip is to choose fattier and tougher cuts of meat. If you have to make a choice between organic and conventional meat, I would suggest buying lean conventional meat because the toxins are actually stored in the animal's fat tissue. So buy conventional meat that's lean, and then buy the fattier cuts of meat that are organic. And those tend to be cheaper anyways. So if you're buying like a chuck roast, you could buy that organic, and those nutrients in there, all the connective tissue, is actually really good for you. And then another thing that a lot of people are put off by, but I think is really important, is you can eat organ meat. And organ meat, even pastured, grass-fed, organic, is very inexpensive just because culturally we don't eat it. You know, it's not in demand. So I buy organ meat at the farmer's market for $2 to $3 a pound. And I usually eat it a couple times a week, and that just, that makes my food bill go down considerably, you know. And organ meat is actually really high in a lot of vitamins and minerals, especially fat-soluble vitamins like A and D, that are really important to healing from autoimmune disease.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I mean, I'm a big fan of organ meat. It's kind of an acquired taste if it's something you haven't
really
eaten
is.
before.
I didn't like it. I will totally admit, I was not into the flavor, but it made me feel so good when I started eating liver on a weekly basis that it's not for everyone, but I would feel like I was missing out on giving a piece of information if I didn't share that about my recovery, because I didn't recover eating chicken breasts. Like, I really got in there and I ate liver, you know, and it's so nutrient dense that I don't think it's a coincidence, you know?
Well, right. And liver is so important for the conversion of thyroid hormone, for the production of many other hormones, and for so many processes that are impacted by Hashimoto's.
It's so true. And if people are worried about the toxins, like I said before, the liver filters the toxins, but it doesn't store them. The toxins are stored in the fat.
Right.
So if someone's worried about toxins, first of all, buy organic meat. Buy grass-fed, pastured organic meat. Don't buy conventional meat, but be wary of the fat. Don't be wary of the liver.
Right.
Because those nutrients, like you said, are going to enable your own liver in order to function properly. And that's what your body needs in order to filter all the toxins that you're taking in,
Exactly.
And then another tip I have is to render your own fat. Cooking fat, solid cooking fat is really important. And especially with people that are allergic or sensitive to coconut oil, buying bulk fat from a farmer like I do with the liver at $2 to $3 a pound, and you cook it up and melt it down and put it in a mason jar, strained, and you have beautiful cooking fat to enjoy. You can roast vegetables in it. And so anytime I cook like a duck, I'll save all the fat and I'll use it. Or if I cook bacon, I'll save all the fat and I'll use it to cook vegetables. It's another way to save money, is to render your own fat. Having an herb garden is really a good way. Herbs actually per ounce are the most expensive produce. Because if you think about it, you get like a tiny little sprig for like $3.
Right.
And so just think, if you had some pots on a windowsill, you don't even need outdoor space to grow herbs. You can grow your own thyme, rosemary, basil, oregano, kind of whatever you want. And even if that's all the space you have, that's a really good option for people that are looking to save money.
Absolutely. I live here in Los Angeles, and that's exactly what I'm going to show people. I have a Hashimoto's garden with all those herbs in pots, plus a lot of these other vegetables in small plots out in my backyard.
Yeah, and if you have a little space, you can start a small vegetable garden of really simple, easy to care for foods. Like, I like to do greens, so I do a bunch of lettuces and a bunch of mixed greens, and I have some baby lettuce and then some head lettuce, and then I do a ton of brassicas, so kale, collard greens. I also do some spinach, and I don't really bother with a lot of the more the vegetables that need a little more maintenance or water. I live in the Pacific Northwest, so it rains a ton here, so that the lettuces and the greens just kind of grow no matter what. They're really low maintenance. But I'd say wherever you're at, you might be able to find some vegetables that you can grow, and that will definitely impact your grocery bill,
Yeah. Wow, those are some great tips, Mickey.
Yeah. I have
more?
one more.
Okay.
Yeah, I have one more.
Okay, yeah. Great.
So joining a buying club, if you live on the West Coast, and I actually believe that they're starting to do it on the East Coast, there's a company called As Your Standard, and they do bulk organic delivery. And so what happens is a bunch of people in a neighborhood go in together and they order like a really big bulk order, and they carry like everything a specialty health food store would carry, but maybe in like a gallon quantity. So you can get a really good organic olive oil for like $30 a gallon, when really you'd be buying it for like $12 for 8 ounces or something at the store. So the community bands together, they have a drop point, they give it to you bulk in big portions, but it's a really good way to save money, as is Costco, which most people have a Costco. A lot of people have Costco membership. You can get things like frozen fish. Now I've seen organic avocados, berries, produce, coconut
They made organic coconut oil recently.
Yeah, totally. They have coconut products, so they're coming around to the kind of real foods movement, and they're offering a lot more products at an affordable price. So if people are worried about money, I think there are a lot of options. You definitely got to work the system. You can't just go to the grocery store and buy all this food and then expect it not to be expensive, but it can definitely be done.
Yeah. Wow, those are great tips. Since you brought it up, let's jump into the goitrogens and the brassica family.
Yeah.
I think it's a common misconception.
Yeah.
I love Sarah Ballantyne, Paleo Mom's new book. She's got a wonderful section in there about it. Dr. Karazian recently did a blog post on this. This is really a myth. I think it's time for us to blow this up and stop the nonsense about goitrogens.
Totally. Well, goitrogens are foods that have been shown in lab studies to impact thyroid function. And what that translates to with normal people eating normal amounts of vegetables is not really any effect.
Right.
So, Dr. Karazian referenced a bunch of research showing that in the quantities that we eat it and in our bodies, it actually has very little to no effect. Right. And these vegetables, they're actually more than just the brassicas. It's things like sweet potatoes, strawberries, peaches. I mean, all of these foods are very nutritious. They contain vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, like different phytonutrients and fiber that I think are just incredibly important. Even sulfur, I miss sulfur. I mean, those are all nutrients that I think are really a part of a nutrient-dense diet and a part of healing from chronic illness. And when you take so many foods out of the diet, I think it's really tempting to say, and then I'm going to take out this category and this category and this category just because, I'm going to heal myself. But really, we have to look at why. Why are we removing these things? The autoimmune protocol is based on science. These foods are based on science. This isn't based on hearsay or rumor, So I think the goitrogens, as long as people aren't juicing cabbage, I think that someone somewhere probably could overdose on them and have a problem. But I think in a regular quantity, having kale, sauteed kale with breakfast and eating a peach with lunch, is not a problem. And I mean, I've never had a problem with these foods. And I'm perfectly healthy living with Hashimoto's. And I know you too, Mark, have a similar experience.
Right, so, exactly. Yeah, they're a very important part of my diet. Again, I just want to emphasize the point you made. They are extremely nutritious. A lot of things we need. I'm glad you brought up sulfur. Sulfur is one of the pathways that's very important for the conversion of thyroid hormone. So yes, we definitely need that. And also, really, I recently did the interview with Dr. Karazian, and one of the things he pointed out was really, this is not what's causing the inflammation in the thyroid. It's not the goitrogens. It's the autoimmune process. It's the things like gluten. It's these other things that are causing, the immune reactions in our bodies, not the foods from the brassica family.
I agree wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Wow, fantastic stuff. Man, Mickey's so knowledgeable. I love talking to her. All right, so please check out the rest of the conversation. The entire thing is up there on the Module 2 page. Just want to recap a few of the issues, particularly around the science of whether or not goitrogens really should be in your diet. This is a pet peeve of mine. It really bothers me. If you don't know what goitrogens are, they're the vegetables like most of the Nebraska family, like broccoli, cabbage, kale, cauliflower. And there's some research that supposedly links them to goiters. Goiters are like those huge things that stick out of your neck. You know, those, yes, potentially they can cause goiters in the absence of severe iodine and selenium deficiency. But here's the reality. Most people with Hashimoto's do not have goiters. They have nodules, like me. Look, you can see my nodule. It's right here. And it's a result of inflammation of my thyroid, the thyroiditis part of Hashimoto's thyroiditis. And it's there because of the autoimmune process. It's there because years ago I didn't know enough to not eat gluten or to not eat these other dietary proteins, the things that really cause that inflammation. It's not from eating broccoli or kale. In addition, these vegetables are great sources of sulfur. Thyroid hormone is converted from T4 to T3 in the liver using two metabolic pathways. Sulfation, which uses sulfur, and glucuronidation. So sulfur is a really key component of getting your thyroid hormone to work in your body. You need it. These plants are also rich in antioxidants. They have important anti-cancer properties. A lot of people with Hashimoto's are at risk for thyroid cancer. Well, we want anti-cancer stuff. And the real issue around these are these two compounds that when the food is, the vegetables are chewed or broken down, can impair thyroid function by inhibiting TPO. But only if that person is severely iodine or selenium deficient. And very few people are severely iodine or selenium deficient. In fact, iodine can really cause major problems with people with Hashimoto's. You only need trace amounts for the thyroid to function properly. And I've seen people's, just on a side note, I've seen people's lives completely wrecked by too much use of iodine. So you have to be very, very, very careful with iodine and Hashimoto's. Selenium, on the other hand, I highly recommend. In the food sources of vitamins and minerals section, you will find great food sources for selenium, iron, magnesium, all the B vitamins, everything. It's really cool. Cooking also deactivates one of these compounds called myrosinase, which is an enzyme. So steam, blanch, or stir-fry these vegetables, and you're not going to have any problems. There's another potentially problematic compound called isothiocyanates, which actually has a good side. It stimulates T4 synthesis. Remember, we're trying to heal the thyroid here, not kill it. So we want it functioning well. Yes. And this compound works with selenium to form glutathione, which is about my favorite thing on the planet. Glutathione is an awesome antioxidant produced in the liver. It helps our body get rid of virtually every environmental toxin on the planet. And it's super important for boosting the regulatory part of the immune system. It's a really good thing, glutathione. Along with vitamin D, they work together to calm the immune system. Goitrogens are complete crap, people. Don't listen to it. Next time someone tells you, hey, you gotta avoid goitrogens, a light should go off in your head, a little light bulb. Bing! This person is way behind the times, and they don't know what's happening. Actually, really, that could be a test for whether or not you want to work with someone. When you're auditioning them to say if they should be your practitioner, ask them, hey, what do you think about goitrogens? Because if they say, oh, you should not eat them, then the next sentence will probably be, and you need lots of iodine. So, don't do it! Please, I'm begging you. Okay. Now, the other thing I want to go over is how to use this diet in some really specific situations on some of the health issues that we've identified in all those forms we filled out this week. So let's recap a few of those big ticket items. The first one was, of course, leaky gut. We looked at intestinal issues and intestinal permeability issues, the barrier system, and this entire diet is really helpful for this. But some things to pay special attention to are the bone broths. Broth made from bones is really a great way to heal the lining of the intestine. The fermented vegetables, those are really helpful. Actually, vegetables in general, really helpful for the good bacteria, which we need for thyroid hormone conversion also. It's those good bacteria that do that job for us. a reason why antibiotics are not good for thyroid hormone. Probiotics may be a good thing to add also at this point. Something else to be aware of is stomach acid issues. All right, we looked at that. A lot of people with Hashimoto's have too little stomach acid, and this can cause problems all down the line. It can cause problems in the gallbladder, problems with the pancreas not secreting those pancreatic enzymes, problems in the intestine, food not breaking down, hanging out there, fermenting, and causing more problems, breaking down, eating in the gut, etc. So to boost stomach acid, some simple remedies include apple cider vinegar, lemon juice. You can have them with water. A little fresh ginger or ginger tea. These things can all boost stomach acid level. Have it a little bit before you eat your meal, and that will help with better nutrient absorption. So, little trick. Next one are gallbladder and liver issues. Right? Increasing your stomach acid levels will actually help the gallbladder work better. Another thing to incorporate are the green leafy vegetables for the liver and the gallbladder. The brassica family that you now have my permission to eat all you want. Those goitrogens that aren't goitrogens. One of the best things you can do for liver also is eat liver. Liver is one of the most concentrated sources of vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin B12, copper, magnesium, phosphorus, manganese, iron. All of that stuff is really great for the thyroid too. Liver's good for the thyroid. Another thing to consider are dandelion, both the greens and the root, really good for the liver. Help clean it out. Milk thistle, also fantastic, and stinging nettle. Okay, the next thing is blood sugar issues. Right, these are huge. Virtually everybody has some problem in these areas. Remember we talked about two types. There's hypoglycemia, or too little blood sugar, and there's insulin resistance, which is usually caused by too much. Again, this whole diet will address blood sugar issues. But another thing to realize is many of us really are sugar addicted. I'm one of those people. And I had to face it. And I had to get away from it. Right? I can't just pretend like I don't have a sugar problem and then substitute some honey and some maple syrup and some gluten-free grains, which are all sugar anyway. It's still sugar, and if you're an addict, you're just going to eat a lot of that. And that's not going to solve the problem. So the substitutes for sugar are good protein and good fat. That's where you should go when you crave sugar. With hypoglycemia, you have to start the day with a good protein and a good fat combination. And to be honest, breakfast is a real challenge with this new lifestyle. Everything you ever thought of as breakfast, you can't eat anymore. So, there's no thing to think about breakfast. Breakfast really, in a lot of ways, is like a commercial invention anyway. The breakfast cereals that have been sold to us, the pastries, the French toast, everything is sugar, 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 sugar. And it's really popular because many people are addicted to it, and what's the best thing for profits is addiction. Once you get people hooked, you keep selling to them. But it doesn't serve you. Right? When you have sugar for breakfast, you get this burst of energy, and then you crash. And for some people, their day never recovers. This is why they reach for the cup of coffee. Right? Hour later, another cup of coffee. In the afternoon at 3, another cup of coffee, with a lot of sugar, by the way. And it's wrecking their adrenals, and their pancreas, and their liver, and eventually their heart, and their cardiovascular system, and even their brains. Remember last week we were talking a little bit about type 3 diabetes? That's Alzheimer's. It's sugar-induced. So forget this idea about something sweet for breakfast. You need a meat, you need a good fat. Have some bacon and some veggies. Have a meat patty and an avocado. Have some fish and avocado. You can even do a smoothie with some plant protein and some coconut oil, a little avocado, a little fruit. Yummy. Eat to heal yourself. Right? Start seeing your diet for what it is. It's an opportunity to heal at every meal. Heal at every meal. So start the day with a good protein and a good fat. Eat frequently throughout the day. Don't go too long between meals. Don't let this crash happen. Keep it like this. Keep it there. For insulin resistance, we have to just have less sugar, period. That's it. We got to cut it out. And the adrenals also benefit from this blood sugar balance and from stress elimination. Next week, we're really going to get into the adrenals and all of that. So what about the thyroid and the brain? Well, by calming the immune attack, by healing the gut, by balancing blood sugar, we're really doing a ton for both these things. The brain is, remember, is 60% fat. So good fat is hugely important for the brain. You're just giving the raw materials. Circulation, also hugely important for the brain. We're going to look at how to exercise in week 4 and how to get some blood flow to that brain. The other thing that's critically important for the thyroid and the brain are things that reduce inflammation even more directly. So I just want to finish up by talking about a few additional things that are really super for that. Turmeric is one. It's a great anti-inflammatory. It reduces brain inflammation and reduces thyroid inflammation. You can cook with it. There are some really good recipes in the book for just meals with turmeric and turmeric tea. This is stuff you want to have a lot of. You can't overdo it. So have it whenever possible. Glutathione, I was mentioning it before. Great antioxidant, great anti-inflammatory. You can get it in a cream, liposomal cream, rub it on your thyroid, help reduce some of the inflammation. You can take it in a capsule form. You can get it in IV. You have to get the right form, but super, super helpful. And we also want to include foods that really help recycle and make more of it. An example of that is cordyceps, which is a wonderful Chinese herb. Actually comes from a fungus and it has this kind of chocolatey taste. Cordyceps, really good. Vitamin D, also a really important anti-inflammatory. It helps regulate immune function too. It kind of works synergistically with the glutathione. Another thing is resveratrol. Resveratrol is another excellent anti-inflammatory. Works synergistically with turmeric. Together they unwind some of the root causes of inflammation, something called NF-kappa beta. And resveratrol is also great for heart and blood vessel health. It can be immune stimulating. For some people, you just want to be cautious, be aware. You might get a reaction from it. But generally, it's very, very helpful. And the last thing is bromelain, which is an enzyme found in pineapple, and it's really helpful for reducing inflammation in the thyroid and also elsewhere in the body, particularly in the joints. So all good things. You can get in from food, and you can have or supplement with them. And another thing, you know what's super nutritious for the thyroid? Organ meat, especially liver. And if you're really adventurous, you can even eat thyroid gland. I know it sounds crazy, but best thing for the thyroid is thyroid. Would anyone actually do that? I don't know. I might try it. Why not? All right. We covered a ton this week. Let's recap a little bit. I'm sorry we went a little bit over, but man, we had some awesome stuff. I had to get to all of it. So, a few things. One last thing I want to talk about before my final point is an aspect of the diet. There's a couple things to this. There's 2 different phases. The first phase is called the elimination phase, and then the second phase is the reintroduction phase. The elimination phase is when you must be very, very strict with the diet. You got to really stick with it 100%. Mickey was talking about 30 days. I usually recommend 60 to 90 days, depending on how bad things are. If things are really, really bad for you, you got to go longer. And you got to really stick with it 100% and really commit to it, because it's going to make everything calm down. And once everything calms down, then you can get some perspective and you start to really feel better. Then you can do the next phase, which is the reintroduction phase. And some keys that are important in the reintroduction phase is you want to reintroduce things only one at a time. Best thing to do is do them for 3 days. Take that one food, like let's say eggs. Take eggs, have them for breakfast, have it later in the day, whatever, as much as you want for 3 days. See if you have any reactions. The reactions you're looking for are digestive. Are you getting any reactions in the gut? Any discomfort, pain, bloating, any type of that reaction? Are you getting any joint pain reactions? Are you getting any neurological reactions? Are you getting any mood changes? Are you getting any dizziness, fuzzy-headedness, anything in your brain? You want to look for all those types of reactions. You want to keep a journal while you're doing it. Note it carefully. Once you've done that for 3 days, go back to the diet for a day, and then reintroduce something else. But keep eggs out when you reintroduce that other new thing. So this takes a little bit of time to do this, but you can gradually reintroduce more things and you expand the palate and get back to some of those foods that you like. Okay, and the last point I want to make is that, all of this really requires a mind shift. right? It also requires the commitment we spoke about in Module 1. And for some of you, this is going to be a radical new way of eating. Certainly, you're going to have to redefine breakfast. And there's going to be some resistance. There's going to be some gremlins. There's going to be some obstacles, maybe in your house, other family members. But again, remember last week we looked at what's really at stake. You know, this is a progressive disease. It can lead to some really ugly developments. And we saw how we have to make stopping that progression our number one objective. And this is the biggest thing we can do to stop that progression. Right? This week we saw how much of autoimmune disease is born in the gut, and how diet has a huge impact, doctor, and therefore it also has a huge impact on our healing. And what I hope you come away with from all of this is the idea that we have to start looking, at these day-to-day things kind of critically and ask the question, are they promoting and helping me move toward healing or not? And if they aren't, then it's time to change them. I can't really say it any other way. That's really the bottom line. Because these are the changes that can really bring about miraculous things. This is the root. Look at Mickey's story. Look how her life was transformed. Look at my story, how I was transformed. And we're just two examples. There are many, many more people who have also had the same experience. And I believe you are also going to be some more success stories if you embrace this and really commit to this. I know you can do it. And last week, I know you had a ton of homework. I know some people freaked out. It was all those forms and all that stuff. And if you haven't yet, please summarize them and get me copies of them and also the summary of them. And let's set up a time to chat and go over them. And if you haven't scheduled with me, shoot me an email. I'll send you a link to do that. This week for your homework, I want you to really get into the cookbook. I want you to check out these videos. I want you to take a look at your kitchen. Think about where some changes need to be made, if they do. In the cookbook, there are shopping lists, there are meal plans, there are ideas for setting up your pantry. So take a look around your kitchen, look at your cupboards, see, is there stuff that needs to be thrown away? Is there stuff that you need to finish up or give away? You got to clean some stuff out to make room for this new stuff. There's stuff there that you can't eat anymore, I have a feeling. So let's meet and talk about it, and let's really get this thing going. All right? Awesome. So now we're going to go to the Q&A section. I know there's going to be a ton of questions on this. I'm really excited to get to that. I'm Marc Ryan, licensed acupuncturist and herbalist from Hashimoto'sHealing.com. Be good, be kind, and remember to have compassion for everyone, including yourself.
Hashimoto'sHealing.com